guests and callers, and not necessarily those of this station, its staff, management, or sponsors. It's Monday night at 9 p.m. and time for Sex Talk with the Siegel brothers. Dr. Ricky Siegel is a certified sex therapist, educator, and supervisor, and his brother Larry Siegel is a clinical sexologist and certified sexuality educator. The Siegel brothers are here to answer all your questions about sex and sexuality, but we're unsure who to ask, including questions you didn't even know you had. They will also welcome guests from around the globe to talk about a wide variety of topics and issues within the fascinating world of sexuality. Thank you for joining us, and welcome to Sex Talk.
Good evening, and welcome to Sex Talk with the Siegel brothers. It's Monday night at 9 o'clock. My name is Dr. Richard Siegel. I'm a certified sex therapist and director of Modern Sex Therapy Institutes.
And I'm Larry Siegel, a clinical sexologist and certified sexuality educator. Welcome.
Welcome, my brother, and good to have you with us. Those of us who are listening, if you're local, we're on 95.3 FM, 1470 AM, and we're streaming live on Facebook. If you missed the show or would like to listen to it later on, you can find us archived on YouTube as well. On the YouTube,
yes,
like the old people are saying.
And the phone lines are going to be open tonight, so again, give us a call. If you have any questions, any comments, if you want to vent about something, feel free to give us a call. 888-565-1470. Did I remember that correctly?
No, you got to say 1470, like WN.
WN.
888-565-1470. That's the number. Give us a call and join the conversation. It's Sex Talk. So always a lot going on. What's on your mind tonight? Oh, we had a question.
Yes.
Didn't we? We had an email question during last week's show that we didn't see till after the show.
Yes.
So we should answer it because we appreciate the emails very much. The question was about sperm, wasn't it? And sperm competition.
Sperm competition.
Yes, I believe you know a lot more about this topic than I do, but I remember hearing something weird about not all sperm are egg seekers, and some of them are like linemen and blocking.
Yeah, I've always found that like really, really fascinating. That when you look at like on a typical football play, right, a kickoff return, the receiver gets the ball, and the other guys on the team form this flying wedge. And not so incidentally or accidentally, sperm seem to do that as well.
Wow.
You know, the non-egg seeking sperm, some of them are going to kind of do that, same kind of formation, run interference, you know, for protection for the egg-seeking sperm, and some of them will hang out and kind of stay back so that they can sort of beat up any other guy's sperm that may be deposited right after that.
Gang up on them.
Yeah, I call that the primacy of the first sperm.
Right.
Yeah.
That evolutionary basis.
And we've, you know, over fairly recent, really, I'd say a matter of months, we've known about this idea of sperm competition, but what some of the implications are, I think, are just kind of coming out. In fact, our dear friend David Lay, along with Dan Savage and Justin
Lee Muller,
right? In their article that they've just written, kind of talked about that.
Oh, and talking about the cuckold fantasy.
The cuckold fantasy, right, and why that does seem to have so much appeal for heterosexual men.
Well, their studies was with gay men,
right,
which made it even more unusual because it seemed odd.
I'll be honest, that threw me.
Yeah, it seemed odd that the fantasy was always about a man watching his woman be taken by another man.
Right.
And I think their theory going into the study was if marriage equality being the law of the land had some effect, that just being married, whether you're in the same sex or an other sex marriage, just being married brings in that sense of competition and excitement. And also what was really fascinating, and man, somebody should call in if you have comments or questions about this, maybe if any of our researchers or therapists are listening. I was really amazed at the inverse relationship between sexual orientation and what is most fascinating about the fantasy, right? According to their survey, for gay men, the attraction was just on seeing their partner with another partner.
Right.
It wasn't really so much about the penis size of the other partner, which was really the essence of the cuckold fantasy, where the more heterosexual a guy was, the more fixated he was on on the other guy's penis.
Because my take on that is because in same-sex relationships with gay men, it is about partnership. And typically, historically, in heterosexual relationships, especially from the guy's perspective, it's about possessiveness.
Ownership.
It's about ownership. And what really kind of makes cuckolding as opposed to just, multiple partners, threesomes, things like that, is the humiliation aspect of it.
And the
which
threat.
is where the racist aspect, is also a part of it that we can't ignore, because it's the humiliation at the hands of what they would refer to as a bull, which is usually a large penis black man.
Yeah.
Right? And that becomes the sort of source of the, in a way, humiliation. But I think what they were pointing out and what they were showing with that, not just that sort of difference between, let's say, same-sex relationships and heterosexual relationships in terms of the impact of that, but how that affects sexual performance. And what it really kind of kicks in with this idea of sperm competition is also the element of sperm displacement.
Yeah, kick out the other guys.
Exactly. Exactly.
I was trying. I can't find the email. I'm sorry, and I can't recall the gentleman's name who sent it. But he
Jacob,
also,
I believe.
Jacob, right?
Yes.
There was also a question about the sort of flange effect,
the shape of the
right?
penis,
the
really.
shape that the reason for the glands having a kind of ridge, or
the
corona. Actually might pull out another guy's semen while he's thrusting. Right.
And that goes along with, in those situations, in these cuckolding situations, when there is that other man, it's not just sort of the sperm competition that's happening, but you see the behavioral part of it, where these guys will be thrusting deeper and harder, which is where a lot of that displacement also comes from. So there's real behavioral changes that go along with that.
Right. I've said for all the years I've been in this field, and I still feel like a newbie after what's like 25 going on 30 years now. It must be closer to 35, or I don't want to say how old you are on the air. But after all these years, I never stop being amazed. Right. And like we always say, this is one of these fields. You can study sexology for 200 years and never finish the discipline.
You'll never know
If you're an organic
everything.
chemist, I think you can get to a point where you're
done.
to the end of the book.
Yeah.
Right? You know everything that we know about organic chemistry,
Right.
but sexology, we're just scratching the surface.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's always more, and there's building on. And, I was even talking with some of my students today that, one of the greatest aspects of what we do is no matter how much pleasure somebody is getting, we can always help them find more.
Yeah, even when it's great, it can always be better.
Exactly.
That's terrific.
So let's take a moment. We have somebody calling in. I believe William is on the line. William, are you there?
Yes, I am. How's it going, guys?
Good. How you doing?
Thanks for calling in.
Yeah,
What's on your mind?
appreciate it.
I'm pretty good. So I have my question is pretty simple this week. It's just, why do men masturbate more than women?
Because we can.
Well, it's like I mean, I guess just beyond that, like why do men seem to just have a greater sex drive than women do?
That's a really fascinating question, and I don't know that it's. I really don't think it's physiological. My hunch has always been that it's just the way
societal.
Yes, that women are no less horny than men, but they're socialized differently. Right. I mean, even look at like when we're little children, when we discover our genitals. When boys discover the purposeful erection, the adults usually laugh about it. Oh, look, he's discovered his toy. Life will never be the same.
Right.
When girls try to explore their bodies, they're much more likely to, ooh, don't touch that. You'll go blind. And there's more likely to have a disconnect. I think men generally have a closer relationship with their genitals than women do. And it's a societal pass to play with it, right? Women aren't supposed to. Only weird women. Of course, our history. This is where hysteria came from, or part of it. That if a woman masturbated, she would be stricken with hysteria. Ironically, the treatment for hysteria was
basically
was
masturbating
jilling
her
them off in the doctor's office.
But you know what? But I think another good part of your question, William, and given what was just said, would also kind of have to acknowledge that there is more of a biological imperative for males to ejaculate than it is for women.
to orgasm.
Right? When we look at the reproductive value of orgasm for men, it's a different value than it is for women. Not that we've thought for a long time that orgasm is kind of irrelevant and has no reproductive value for women, which we know is not true, but not on the level that we see it with men. So I think there is more of a biological imperative for regular release. We also know that it's healthy for you.
Right.
William, as I'm assuming a young man, probably should know that regular orgasms, regular ejaculations, like 3 to 5 a week from your 20s on, is a really good way to significantly lower the chances of developing prostate cancer.
In your 50s and 60s.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So I think it's maybe tied to more biological imperatives in men than it is for women, but I would still kind of agree that it is more of a socialization factor than anything else.
So does that mean that that women in other cultures masturbate more than men?
In some, yeah. Right? And in fact, we're also, you know, the part of the reality here is that more women, and I personally, it's my own little kind of issue. I prefer the term self-pleasuring to masturbation, because masturbation is an ugly word.
It is a back-tightening, defensive kind of...
Yes.
Yeah,
I'm not disturbing myself when I do that. In fact, the opposite.
Right. Defiling oneself.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think more women, and this is part of the socialization as well, more women pleasure themselves than would admit it.
Yes. That I would agree with.
And that's an important part of that
But
social
I'd
conditioning.
also say millennials are flipping that like everything else. I'm sure millennial women are much more open and much more likely, much more willing to look at porn than women of any previous generation.
I would tend to agree with that, but I think we have a lot of indication that it's a lot of business as usual with millennials.
Yeah.
There's a lot
Less
of
sex.
rhetoric. Yeah, we look at
Yeah.
millennials in general are having less sex, having fewer relationships. They seem to be, I mean, on the one hand, we hear that millennials in general are, you know, it's way more exploratory and all kinds of things, yet we see in a number of publications that basically millennials are really stick to 3 positions. Missionary, cowgirl or woman on top, and doggy style. And there isn't much exploration and creativity. There may be more in terms of redefining monogamy. Right? So I think we're seeing a lot of that, and I think a lot of the changing attitudes around relationships and even things like marriage, you know, is seen as a patriarchal thing, is seen as an ownership thing. And even with a kind of new monogamy that's often been talked about, it's, all right, we're going to be partners, we're steady partners, but we know that no one person can meet all the needs of another person, so we're free to go outside the relationship.
Yeah.
But it's still so it's the new monogamy is a kind of sort of limited polyamory.
Yeah.
You know, if you think about it. But I think you're statistically, you know, while we can say that 98% of men regularly pleasure themselves.
And 2% lie.
That's right. We kind of see consistently, you know,
75,
85% of women will regularly pleasure themselves. And I know we talk to people where we can see that it's generally higher, but this is what is being admitted openly.
You know, here's something that also amazes me from the you know, observations from the sex therapist's office. I am regularly amazed at how few partnered people know about whether or not their partner self-pleasures.
Oh, yeah.
You'd think you're living with someone, you share a bed, you're married or in a long-term relationship or something. It's so often that we ask patients and they have absolutely no idea. Especially, you know, a certain generation, like maybe 50-something, 60-something, heterosexual married couples who've been married 25, 30 years. You ask men, does your wife self-pleasure? Oh, no, I'm sure not.
Right.
I have no idea.
Right. Well, that's it. I'm sure not.
Yeah, right.
Right, because I do it for her.
There's so many myths about self-pleasuring, that masturbation's just for lonely losers who can't get laid, and once you find a relationship, you don't need that anymore.
Right.
And partner people don't do that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
So, William, in terms of sort of the prompting of your question, was there something that you read or oh, okay, never mind. I would wonder if there was something that was people, we read things, people see things,
Of course,
and I think it's important to understand that not, in fact, probably very little of what a lot of people are going to be looking up is really correct.
Yeah, that's another thing to remember about sexuality information and knowing where to find good resources. I mean, there's a lot. The internet is great. Our dear friend Paul Joannides, author of the Guide to Getting It On, and Dan Savage have both expressed a similar interest that, especially in this era with technology and the internet, sexuality educators are sometimes really, having a rough time mincing their words and tiptoeing around and worrying about keeping the gig, when really they should be more focused on teaching, especially high school and college age folks, millennials, where to find good, solid information online.
Well, and I think it's not just for sexual information. I mean,
that's
internet
true
literacy, I mean, we take for granted. And again, being people that teach in colleges and universities, and we're seeing this every single day, whenever, and now it's gotten to a point where it makes me laugh when I hear adults talking about how incredibly tech-savvy all millennials are. And it makes me laugh because, I'm sorry, and I don't mean any offense with this, but, most millennials do not have a clue. Right? They know how to work Facebook. They know how to do the social media.
And the PlayStation.
Right? And games. But in terms of how this stuff works and how you really use it for non-game kind of thing, most of them don't have any idea.
Anymore,
we have students that don't know how to send an email.
Yeah.
Right? And think that if you Google it, then whatever comes up is instantly
fact.
credible.
You're right. Yeah, I did research.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. So how often do we talk about, and even teach people, especially young people, even the concept of search engine optimization? And how many people think that if they do a search, the ones that come up first because they're better? Well, without knowing that they come up first because they pay for that. That's a form of advertising.
The lessons learned or not yet sinking in about what went on with this last election and how social media had been manipulated to disseminate information and sway people's thinking. I think it really, I hate to say it, but it's been a steady dumbing down for a really long time.
And I think
I just want to, sorry to cut you off. I think what goes hand in hand with that, although it's not new, is the short attention span.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
Forgot what we were talking about. So I also wanted to bring up this new USA Today survey that came out in the news this week, last week?
Last week, I think.
Because, of course, now that Harvey Weinstein has gone away and Kevin Spacey, right? Of course, we've fixed that problem. There's no more sexual harassment in Hollywood. And
well, it's not the headline anymore, so therefore...
So we've moved on to the next thing. Like, it's not happening anymore. The survey just came out, and again, we shouldn't be surprised, but it's a pretty powerful number, that 94... This was a survey of over 800 women who worked in the entertainment industry, and 94% reported some type of sexual harassment or abuse. 94% of women in that industry. And I was thinking about what other industries, like restaurant and hospitality. I'm sure it's got to be...
I'm sure it's equal.
That's the same.
I'm sure it's going to be comparable no matter where you go.
90% of women who are waiting tables deal with this crap day in and day out. Yeah. This is also a really important point that I heard a politician making recently, and I can't remember who, a Democrat, about our ridiculous minimum wage laws and how tipped employees still work for like $2.22 an hour because the IRS figures, they're getting tips. But what do men have to put up with to get tips, and what do women have to put up with to get tips?
Right.
So to just know that it's part of your job to go every day and just put up with crap and be groped and pinched and hit on. Right. And people think that's, tough. Or you get it, I think they get it from the customers and the bosses.
Sure.
Absolutely. Chefs, right? John Besh and who's the Batali.
Mario Batali,
right? Yeah. All these are going down because kitchens are male-dominated places where women are treated like, the help. And if you don't like it, get out.
Exactly. So, I mean, I think that is across every industry. I would say the one that might even stand out even more is when you look at a lot of, You know, and it's kind of a subgenre of the entertainment industry of video models. Right? When you look at a lot of these,
Absolutely.
you know how many
just the whole
of
modeling
these,
industry
but
too.
video and music video models in particular, I don't think I've ever heard one that was interviewed that didn't say that she's kind of had to, if she wants to do this, she has to accept that sexual abuse and assault, not just harassment, is part of the job.
Wow.
Right? Part of the job.
Wow.
Because if you know, all these guys, and we know that this is an industry that's based on nothing more than an adolescent male sexual fantasy.
Yeah.
Right? That's the whole music
yeah.
and especially music video industry. It's all about an adolescent male sexual fantasy. And if girls are willing to come in and dance around and be a part of it, well, then you know what? They have to be willing to do whatever else these guys are willing to do to them.
See, again, unfortunately, we're old enough to remember clearly when MTV was brand new.
Remember the first day?
The very first video played on MTV?
Is Video Killed a Radio Star? And do you know what the second one was?
No.
Ah, you have better trivia. Elvis Costello. What's so funny about Peace, Love, and Understanding?
Yeah. But the first one was ironic. The Buggles, right? Video
Buggles,
Killed
that's right.
the Radio Star.
That's right.
And MTV, the whole premise of a music video.
It's a commercial.
Basically is a commercial to sell DVDs and albums and all of those sexual archetypes.
Yep.
All, like you said, all the classic adolescent fantasy, the schoolgirl outfits with the skirt getting caught on the wind. Aerosmith videos were classic. And, of course, when hip-hop was coming up, there was, remember that scene? I don't remember the song. I can't claim to be
the credit card
devotee, but no, with Snoop and Dr. Dre, where
keeping your pimp hand strong.
Dre is like escorting 9 women into a room, and then Snoop Dogg comes in, and just as he walks into the threshold, Dre like flips out a roll of condoms.
The roll of condoms.
Right,
Yeah.
and I remember a student in class saying, "Oh, that's a safe sex message." Like hell it is.
Right.
That's in case you weren't sure that Snoop was going to have sex with every one of those women.
Exactly.
Just so you get it before you went
that was the message. Right.
And the props and the throwing water everywhere.
And the script, you know, in the world of music videos. If the women don't go along and buy into the male sexual fantasy. I mean, this is part of the video itself. If the women don't go along, they're abused.
Absolutely. Right? Champagne thrown on them like it's
Absolutely.
ejaculating. And
Absolutely.
all of this.
You know, and this whole making it rain thing. Let's be honest, right? When did that become a thing, and how is that not incredibly disrespectful?
That's from the stripper pole, right?
Right.
Throwing singles on us, even that visual of throwing money on a stripper like she's a thing, right? We were talking in class today about how objectification. People get all outraged, you know, porn objectifies women. And I was saying how we objectify. That's part of sexuality.
Yes,
part
absolutely.
of sexuality. Why do we get turned on by body parts? Because we objectify bodies.
Right.
But that level of that crosses into exploitation.
Let me say, but it's that level. But I would even have to say, in all fairness, that if these were isolated things, really don't have issue with it. Again, objectifying is normal. I think where it really becomes a problem is when that is the only message that is being delivered. And it is the only story being told, and it is reinforced over and over and over and over and over again, to the point where not only do guys buy into it, which doesn't surprise me, but that girls buy into this now as well. That they're adopting that identity and expecting that's what they're supposed to do. 30
years, like in the heyday of MTV. Again, I'm thinking of like that video when Madonna, you know, supposed to be the epitome of powerful, empowered, independent women crawling on the ground, drinking out of a dog bowl with a chain.
Do you remember what
on.
I was talking about at the time? I would do, especially with a lot of kids programs, where I was using that to try to make a point. Because again, it's a confused message.
Right.
Self-empowerment versus self-exploitation.
And the desperation that if a man is gone, what will a woman do?
Well,
that's where all the lesbian stuff came from in all those videos. Because
Absolutely.
it's not, right?
And the self-pleasuring.
Yeah, it's just that women, also to William's question, that women are so desperate that if a man isn't around, they'll turn to each other until we show up, and then it'll be the threesome. The
doesn't even have
fantasy.
to be another person, any object that might be available, because that's part of the fantasy too, right? And I love that idea that when you look at a lot of these models and the way women are portrayed in music videos, it's not completely all about sex. They have jobs.
Oh, sure.
Right? They have women pilots, and like all women pilots, they wash the plane and get each other all soapy and sudsy. They're police officers, and like
nurses.
of course, all nurses, and we know that nurses always take baths.
Sponge baths.
While they're on duty.
Sponge baths.
Right? So, I mean, it's such a ridiculous script. Now, again, it's entertainment, it's fluff. There's an element where I think sometimes we do maybe risk taking too much issue with it, but it is constantly reinforced.
Right.
And there's no other perspective.
And unfortunately, that's the only sex ed that a lot of young people get. Now, we're not anti-porn crusaders. In fact, we sometimes advocate for the benefits. But if porn is the only sex ed young guys get, that's a serious problem.
Now, let me just point something out, because even as we're talking about music videos,
keep an eye on time.
You went like right into right to porn, and that's an important conflation, because music videos are really
rock stars
softcore
wanted
porn.
to be porn stars, and porn stars wanted to be in all the rock stars wanted to have porn stars in their videos.
And how many rock stars are dating porn stars now? And
whenever before that could anybody name porn stars? Or if they could, they wouldn't admit it in public.
It was never part of mainstream.
They weren't celebrities like Jenna Jameson became, right?
We have the AVNs now.
Yeah, right? We'll have to save that for another show, because I have questions there too.
Yes, but again, a lot of this stuff has been mainstreamed. And I think there's a lot of positive stuff that comes out of that too, but I'm going to keep coming back to this idea that we're too myopic, that as long as we can present other views and just see this as one thing and not create a truth out of it, that's the problem. All right, again, we're kind of at the end of our time here, but let me just say that we know that if we hear statistics like 85% of males between the age of 15 and 19 demand sex if they spend a lot of money on a girl, that's not surprising. But the 45% of girls in that age group that believe it, that bothers me.
That's
right. So we've got some work continuing to be cut out for us.
A never-ending, ongoing discussion here on Sex Talk with the Siegel Brothers. Thank you for joining us. Thanks for listening. Thanks, please, for clicking like and sharing on Facebook.
Yeah,
and
share it with all your friends. Have them share it too.
Keep that number handy if you're a regular listener, 888-565-1470. And we'll see you next week.
Yes, indeed. Thanks a lot. Have a great night and good week.
Think sexy thoughts.
You've been listening to Sex Talk with the Siegel Brothers. Join us every Monday night at 9 p.m. on WNN, 1470 AM and 95.3 FM. Or watch live streaming video at AMP2 TV Productions on Facebook, or look for the shows on YouTube. Thanks for tuning in, and we hope you'll join us again next week.